Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. Welcome to Knife AQ number 42, the knife series where we attempt to answer the ultimate questions. Got a few good things to talk about today. Talking about some American-made knives under $100, some big old Kukris, and we're even bringing back our good buddy Seth for a new segment. So let's get into it. All right, before we jump into the first question today, as always, if you want a chance to have one of your questions featured in one of these episodes, just go ahead and drop those in the comments and we'll comb through, pick out some good ones. First one this week comes to us from a man with the name, or maybe a man, I don't know, someone with a username called A Pox on Usernames.
Okay.
It's off to a good start. Says, I'm looking for a good Altoids survival kit knife for an ultimate backup. I do a lot of canoeing in cold water, and the idea is if I lose everything else and a capsize, this kit that will be in my life jacket pocket will be enough to get a fire going. Sure, we did cover this a little bit before, I think in a couple different knife AQs actually. We did some folder and some fixed blade options, but the reason I'm bringing it back up this time is we've got an old new knife, or a new old knife, back on the market. The Doug Ritter RSK Mark V, previously available as a CRKT product, but they discontinued that a little bit ago, but Doug still wanted to have this on the market. First of all, because he does put these in some adventure medical kits, survival kits out there, and also it's just a handy little blade to have, and they're back on the market just without the CRKT name on them. Same factory and everything that made the original, and now we've got a stonewash and a black coated version to choose from. Now, as for the specs on these, they're not a super steel, not even close, but they do come in only at about $14, so they're very affordable, and with that you're just getting a simple 3CR stainless steel to go along with it. But in terms of the overall shape, we've got about 1 1/4 or 1 3/4 of an inch of blade, plenty of belly there, so at least you get a little bit more edge in that given blade length than you might otherwise. And as far as the handle, it's kind of a 2 to 1.5 to 2 finger grip depending on your hand size, but you do have the lanyard there to increase the grip a little bit. If you wanted to put like a more significant knot there, you'd have even more even better hold on that. But this is going to be enough to do some of those last ditch things. You need to make a few curls for a feather stick, even maybe split down some smaller pieces of wood in an emergency. You could certainly do it. Sheath that it comes with, just a little simple injection molded thing here that I like to drop apparently. Slides in there quite easily. And he did design these specifically to fit into that style of Altoids tin that's so popular, and he even comes with its own version of it right here. So that'll pop right in. Pardon me a moment while I flip the lanyard around. Fits in there very easily, plenty of room, pops right up so you can build your kit out of this. One thing to keep in mind, especially if you're taking this out on a canoe, these tins are not exactly waterproof, so make sure your fire starting gear, whether it's a little bit of tinder or matches, heaven forbid, make sure they're good and sealed up inside of that kit, or else no knife whatever knife you put in there is not going to do you much good at all. All right, next up from Tim Reed, he asks mirror edge versus toothy edge and their applications and strengths. Sure, I talked about this a little bit the other day, which is where this question came up. There is a pretty significant difference that I think people don't tend to think about as much in something with a high polished or mirror edge versus a toothier edge. And it really comes down to push cuts versus pull cuts or draw cuts. Any kind of push cut where you're just pushing straight into the wood, you're not drawing the edge along whatever you're cutting, a high polished edge or a mirror finished edge is going to be a little bit better. That's why you see it sometimes on some of the Scandi ground knives, or I think most of the, maybe not all, but a lot of the Genesis family of Scandi ground knives from LT Wright. You can see you've got a nice high polish there on the Scandi edge. This one right here is the Gen 5 with a Python micarta handle. Comes in a bit above $250 right now, US made. But that's not exactly what we're here to talk about. But on any kind of Scandi ground knife, it really excels at carving wood because you're just pushing in, kind of like a chisel. Chisels, another good application for a high polished edge. You really want that edge as fine as it can be to really just shove through stuff. On the draw cut stuff, where the edge is being drawn along a surface, and this could be anything from sawing through rope, or even like a machete where you're slashing through vegetation. That's a kind of pull cut where the edge is going to be slicing through. Toothy edge might be, or a toothier than a mirror polished edge is going to be a little bit better, because on a microscopic structure, it kind of grabs in and saws in a little bit more. Think of it like kind of a serrated edge, but really small. But yeah, that's the slashing type of machete. If you're looking at like a chopper, like something that might compete with a hatchet or an axe, maybe a mirror polished edge is gonna be a little bit better. But that's the broad strokes, push versus pull. There you go. Two-part question, essentially, or two different folks asked a very similar question that I'm gonna lump together. First, Chris Reuther asks, I am looking for some American-made knives that are best in class. EDC for under 100. I deeply value American-made and high-value knives. Both options for folders and fixed blade would be awesome. And then Matthew Adler asks two things. Best sub $100 fixed blade for everyday carry, and most premium feeling and or looking folder under 75. Keep up the good work. Sure thing. Matthew Adler didn't specifically ask about US made, but the answers I have here are actually going to be US made. For the folder, I'm just above the $75 mark, but kind of a best-in-class American-made folder under $100 is the Kershaw Bare Knuckle. Comes in about $77 right now. For that, US made. Blade steel, there are more premium blade steel options in this price range, but you're going to get a 14C28N here. But the reason I consider this thing one of the best knives under $100 right now, no matter what genre you're looking at, is the more premium feel you get from this knife. You've got excellent finishing on the blade, aluminum handles, sub-frame lock here on the back, so you get aluminum on the top section, and the lock bar on the bottom. KVT bearings in the pivot, nice and snappy out of the box, deep carry clip. I mean, the only thing that kind of gives away that this isn't a more premium knife is you have an injection molded floating backspacer there at the back. But that's really honestly about it. Phenomenal, phenomenal knife. Great EDC pattern, nice and stylish, and pretty much more premium. I hesitate to use absolutes, but it's one of the most premium things I can think of right now under that $100 price point. Just fantastic knife. As for the fixed blade side of things, I have got to give it to the White River Backpacker. This black coated version comes in above $100, or I think we're like 105 or something like that. But the stone-washed versions are under that $100 price point, and honestly, pretty much my favorite neck knife, no matter what the price. And it's US made, it's under $100. You've got S35 VN steel across the board now. Nice shape. I can say similar things about this knife that I did in our best fixed blade from every brand video earlier this week. I was talking about the Spyderco Street Beat. Similar things apply here in that this knife can do pretty much anything you want your small neck knife to do. Tactical, food prep, EDC, hunting, bushcraft, outdoor stuff, hiking knife, EDC, tactical, hunting, fixed blade. Awesome little knife. Blade length on these guys were about 3 1/4. Not too thick, not too thin. You've got the cord wrap here on the back. You can spend a little bit more money and get some handle scales on this. Some bolt-on options, that's the Backpacker Pro. Or you can get the, what do they call it now? I always forget. I think it's the Caper that has permanently attached handles, but it's otherwise the same profile. Now the blade shape lends itself to all those different uses because you've got enough belly here, but you've got a nice acute point to really kind of bridge the gap between a lot of things. And the key little detail I really appreciate, nice crowned area here at the finger, index finger groove. So very comfortable, not too sharp. It's gonna be quite nice. As far as the sheaths on these guys, I left it in the box here, but that gives me an opportunity to show you the really nice hardwood boxes that they send these with. Actually, it might not be hardwood, it's a little soft. But nicely executed wood, lid slides out from the side. You got a nice Kydex sheath there with an integrated belt loop. And then of course, some Tech-Lock option, or a Tech-Lock compatible hole pattern if you want to do something a little bit different. Now, probably the only downside I can think of about this White River is they're hard to get a hold of these days, just due to demand and the amount of quantities that they're able to produce these days. So if you're having a hard time finding one of these in stock, option here gets you pretty close, and that's the new S35 VN Azulas from Essie. Comes in about 80 bucks. It's a little bit shorter overall. You got a little bit less handle, a little bit less blade, but it's gonna get you in a very similar ballpark, and you can always do your own cord wrap on that, as well as buy some aftermarket scales if you wanna give it a little more girth. And price on these guys, 80 bucks. All right, next question comes to us from Billy C. NYC. In the market for a CIVIVI, narrowed it down to the Elementum or the Pintail. I know there's a price difference of about 35 bucks, but which honestly is the better value? Recommendations, please. Sure thing. One thing to note with NYC in your username, we'll leave a link. We talked about some New York City stuff in a Knife AQ a few weeks back. We'll make sure to point you to that so you can kind of read into the nuances a little bit in terms of the New York City knife situation. But let's dive into the meat of the question. I've got an Elementum and a Pintail here wearing the same handles in this case. This is the olive green micarta. Elementum, about 50 bucks for the G10 versions, and we're just over 80 for these Pintail versions, and they do a lot of things very similarly. Each one has a sub 3-inch blade, so you can carry it most places. Again, check your local laws and check out that New York City video. And they've got the same type of construction. We've got a liner lock on both. We've got ball bearings in the pivot. So snappy action on both. Of course, you get the thumb studs on the Pintail if you like that type of opening method. And if you're a lefty, you're gonna probably appreciate the backwards compatible or the swappable pocket clip on this guy. The Elementum does not have that. In terms of the differences, D2 steel to start on the Elementum and S35 VN on the Pintail. So for that reason, I think if we're going just what's the better value, I honestly got to give it to the Pintail, just the fact that you can get everything that makes the Elementum great. The excellent fit and finish, the nice sharp edges out of the box, the flipping action. You can get all that with a premium steel like S35. For me, that makes this the better bargain, but they're both fantastic bargains. The other things that might sway you in terms of making a differentiation that aren't based on value is one, the left-hand pocket clip ability of the Pintail, certainly. And the other is handle feel. I think the Pintail feels really good. Even though I have, I always say slightly larger than average hands, it still feels good for me. But the larger your hand, the better the Elementum, I think, is going to be because it's a little bit longer and it's a little bit more neutral, so you can get a bit more of a grip on that knife. Answer to your question, you really can't go wrong with either. Take those things into consideration.
Or get them both.
Or get them both. They're both really inexpensive. That way you've got a beater in New York City. If one gets taken away from you, you'll be okay. Next question comes from Shawnee Union. Had a knife business question. Why are some production knives never in stock? Is it just as simple as supply and demand? The ProTech Malibu and Spyderco Shaman are consistently sold out. Can't they just make a lot more? Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a tricky question, but the sentiment you ended on, can't they just make more, sounds easy, but it really isn't. Reason being, there's a whole host of reasons being, quite honest. Well, I'll hold up a ProTech Malibu so you have something else to look at here instead of my mug here. My nice ProTech Malibu. But the reason they're hard to get is because demand has been extremely high the last year and a half especially. And it's impossible to predict what's gonna be the surefire hits from these companies. And so they put out a certain number, they all get bought up. Next batch, they make even more, they all get bought up. It's hard to gauge how many you're actually gonna need until they're out there and gone, really. And just making more involves a lot of steps. First, they have to order the materials. They still have to be able to turn out their other models so that those aren't off the shelves either. And customers can be fickle. This ProTech Malibu is hot, hot, hot right now, still is. Next month, it might not be. You can't say. So they don't want to kind of go all overboard and produce nothing but Malibus or nothing but Shamans for a month and then have the market flooded and the demand's gone. And then they're sold out of other things. So if they had a crystal ball, sure, they'd be able to make a lot more and get exactly as many out there as people are gonna need, but it's tough. And this comes back to something Thomas said a few videos back. The reason these are all sold out, it's your guys' fault. You
bought too many knives.
Bought too many knives, man. So, these are all, even Spyderco is not a huge company. This is still a small group of people trying to see the future and put out what people want. And cut them a little bit of slack maybe. But on the subject of like increasing the production run, they've got, I mentioned ordering materials. They do have to order the stuff in for a batch of knives, and supply chain disruptions this past year and a half have been all over the news. It's hard to miss. So they can order a bunch. They might not get as much as they want from a steel supplier or like the G10 factory, that sort of thing. And everything kind of cascades. Every little delay on the front end gets added onto the back with a little more on top of that for every step of the way, really. All right, next question comes from Johan de Bruto. Great name. Says, I've been contemplating a kukri for some time. This sounds like a name when you're like the one of those advice columns in the newspaper where they don't put their actual name at the end. So this would be from Contemplating Kukris. Yeah. I don't know why, that's amusing to me. But anyway, Johan has been contemplating a kukri, looking at something that can take a severe punishment, full tang as opposed to the traditional stuff, which would have been a stick tang, stonewash blade preferably, and a blade length of at least 15 inches or more. That's big. Intended purpose will be bushcraft generally, hunting and slaughtering, self-defense, etc. I'd like a longer blade to use it from horseback as well. The coolness factor is obviously also in the back of my mind. Exclamation, exclamation, sunglass wearing emoji guy. It sounds pretty cool, actually. Swinging a kukri from horseback.
That's terrifying.
I'm gonna stay inside when when Johan's trotting about. I do have an option here for you. It's not gonna hit all your recommendations or not all your criteria, because we just don't have anything that does completely. The 15-inch length, the only kukri shaped thing we have that's that big is one of the Cold Steel, the Magnum Kukri machete, which isn't quite what you're looking for, I don't think. It's a kukri shaped machete as opposed to a big kukri. There is a bit of a difference there. And also, I'm not gonna be able to give you a stone-washed blade, but I am gonna give you something here that's full tank, can take a ton of punishment, is plenty big, and can do pretty much anything that you'd want a big choppy kukri to do, and that's the BK21, the Becker Reinhardt kukri. So price on these, they're about just over 150 bucks, made in the USA by K-Bar, 1095 CV carbon steel, 13.25 inch blade, and that blade itself, the Reinhardt in the Becker Reinhardt kukri, this is designed by the late Hank Reinhardt on his original kukri design, which did not have the Becker handles on it. But that's essentially what this is a marriage of the Reinhardt blade with those excellent Becker handles that fill the hand quite well, have some good retention if you want. I did this personally on my larger Beckers, including this. I like the Micarta handle scales on there personally. It's a little bit of a cost upgrade, but it feels more secure in my hand. I will say I do kind of get annoyed when people say these Becker handles are too slippery. They're really not. Like, you can chop all day with one of these. The swells and the hooks kind of keep your hand in place. And for me as well, I usually take the front bolt out and I'll run a forward lanyard through here for a little bit of extra safety. But the blade itself on this is where it's at. Devastating, devastating chopper. You can go through hardwoods, no problem. You can do some of that, bushcraft stuff, but pair this with like a Mora for the fine carving. That's going to be a much better bet. But like animal processing, stuff like this, when I was kind of playing around with some of the prototypes of this with Ethan Becker, he told me a story about the original Reinhardt kukri with the non-Becker handle scales on it, being able to take the heads off of cows. That takes care of your slaughter needs, I think, right there. Really awesome. Considering the amount of power you get in one of these, honestly, 150 bucks, it's a little bit of a bargain, I think. Simple sheath, you've got a belt loop here on the back, spine mounted, or it's got an open spine for getting it in and out with a simple retention strap there. You can either carry it on your side, you can throw it onto a bandolier if you wanted to, or just throw it in your pack. That tends to be what I do because I don't want this on my belt. I'll just take it out when I need to do some chopping around camp. Yeah, that's your devastating kukri right there.
But could you cook a steak dinner with it?
Go watch Thomas's Cooking with Kukri's video. It's his little baby from a while ago. That's a Cold Steel though.
Yeah.
In your video. Still a fun video. You should go check it out.
I guess I know what I'm doing on my next vacation.
Wait, they're not supposed to be able to see your face though.
Well, that's already uploaded.
Well, we've given that away. So those of you who've been wanting to see what Thomas looks like, go watch that video. All right, next up, we're starting a new segment, which we hope to be able to do every week. We're bringing Seth V back, our social media guy. He was on here on our Blade Show episode to talk about knives we've got, or knives we picked up from the show. New segment we're calling Seth Says. So I'll be right back. Let me go get him. Excuse me.
So that's where that tunnel leads. Hey everybody, I'm Seth. I'm here to do what I like to do best, which is ramble about knives. So thanks to David, Thomas, and the Knife Center for having me here. I'm looking forward to making it a regular part of my week, and I hope you'll have me. So I came on here today to answer a question and defend what might actually be something of a controversial opinion. So here's the question from Gillies D. Most folding knives are delivered with a tip-up pocket clip, and I prefer that, but some knives have a tip down, which cannot always be reversed. Are there any advantages of a tip down over a tip up that I do not see? So on the table here, I actually have 3 knives from my personal collection, the only 3 knives I own with a tip down clip. And I think they kind of illustrate what tip down does well and what it does not do well. So we'll start with what it does well. So this right here is a Spyderco Military. It comes equipped with a right side tip down only pocket clip. There are a few things about this that I actually like. One is a knife this big, it's kind of nice to be able to carry it in your back pocket. And in your back pocket, tip down carry works great because you can tuck it against the seam, much like you would in your right front pocket, except in the back pocket. And in your back pocket, it's not going to be bending against your hip like it would in your front pocket. So it kind of just stays flat, it stays out of the way. If you find yourself in a job where you're standing up and sitting down all the time, you may actually want to put a knife in your back pocket to keep your hips from kind of getting pinched by the knife you're carrying. The other thing I like on a knife this long and this large, if this were tip up in your pocket, you'd have to pull it out, and no matter how you kind of had your hand around it when you pull out, it's large enough that you have to reposition in order to get your thumb in the spidey hole and open it up. When it's tipped down, you pull it out of your pocket and your thumb is right, or your finger, whichever way you want to do it, is right there next to the spidey hole. Couldn't hardly be closer. So once I got used to it, I found this very intuitive to open. So there's 2 reasons for you might want to carry tip down. On a large knife it works great, and if you want to carry a knife in your back pocket, it works great. Here's an example of a knife. This is now discontinued, but this is the Spyderco Chokwe. This knife is one that I could choose to carry tip up, and I don't. Believe it or not, I know. So in this case, the knife is so wide here at the back that I actually found it much more comfortable to flip the clip, carry it tip down, because there's a lot easier to slide my hand past the knife into my pocket on this side than it was on this side. We've got kind of a hard edge here, it's a lot wider. So on a knife that's really chunky at the rear, tip down carry might be more comfortable for you too. The other thing I like about this knife in particular carrying tip down is when the pocket clip is here, it works as an over travel stop on this frame lock. This frame lock doesn't, have an integrated over travel stop like on a hinderer or something, but this pocket clip here keeps the lock bar from being pushed over too far. So now we're gonna get to the reason that most people don't like carrying tip down, and I can't say I blame them. And that's this knife here. This is a buck Waimea, designed by Mr. Tom Mayo, now discontinued, unfortunately. So this knife doesn't really have any of the other qualities that the other two did. It's not super wide at the back, it's not very big, and if I'm totally honest, I wish this knife would carry tip up, but it only comes with a tip down clip, and I like the knife enough that, I just make do with it. I'm not on here to evangelize tip down carry, but I do think there's places where it makes sense, and I'll defend it where I believe in it, that's all.
All right, bring the other guy back.
Let's see where David's at.
Probably around the bakery.
I'll go let him know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm back. How'd he do? We happy with Seth?
Yeah, he did okay.
He did okay? Okay. Well, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did fine. All right, that must be what these knives were for. Probably. All right, now that we're back from Seth Says, we're going to get into the lightning round for today. First question from Tommy. Hey DCA, I'm looking for a pocket knife that I can close without risking cutting myself. I looked at the SOG Terminus XR, but I worry about the springs breaking. Should I go with something else like Spyderco's compression lock? And if so, what is a good knife under 130 bucks? Short answer, yes, compression lock would be great. I love stuff with a crossbar lock like that SOG has because in addition to being strong and fast, it allows you to keep your fingers away from the edge of the blade while you're closing, which is what you're talking about. But they all do have a little bit of some spring action going on. Compression lock allows the same thing, but it's a very different type of lock. You don't have extra springs to worry about wearing out. So if you're worrying about longevity, these are good to go. As for your price range, the Para 3 lightweight is certainly under there, but for just a few bucks more, 122 or so. S30V steel on this Sage 5 lightweight, definitely the way to go. Next question comes from Big Perm. Can you tell Benchmade to make a bigger version of the Bugout? They've got the mini already, but for me the regular is like a medium-sized knife. Well, I just held it up a second ago. I think you want the Presidio too. Comes in about somewhere. I don't have the price up. It's a little bit more expensive than a Griptilian, but we'll hold it up here next to the various sized Bugouts. Very carefully, of course. Not the same, but we'll get you in the ballpark. I think you'll get a little more strength too. It's not as lightweight of a knife, but still not a super heavy knife. Even though you do have full liners, definitely not gonna weigh you down. S30V steel, close to a 4-inch blade. There you go, that's what you want. Next question comes from Aiki Shush. Greetings, what knives in your inventory that the design are based on Filipino traditional blades? Really? Any balisong, any butterfly knife. Traditional Filipino martial arts and daily utility option. I think especially in the Tagalog region, if I'm not mistaken. Kershaw Lucha, great place to start. Standard versions start at about 120. This blackwash one's a little bit more. Lot of knives based on traditional Filipino designs, even if they're a lot more modern looking nowadays. Last lightning round question comes from Jamin Samey. I've been wondering, for bushcraft knives or survival knives with a crisp 90-degree spine, got one right here, does the spine lose that crispness over time due to ferro rod use? Yes, it certainly can, and definitely will actually. When you strike with that ferro rod, you are going to take little bits out of that corner. Easiest way to do to kind of counteract that, if you've chewed it up a little bit, you can just go in on a flat stone, get yourself that nice crisp ice skate feeling back, or carry a dedicated striker. For me, the spine use is something that's good to know you have, but for me it's more of an emergency type thing. I'd much prefer to carry a striker with me. If you're worried about weight, you can just snap off a little section of hacksaw blade from the hardware store. Makes a great striker. All right, lastly, but not leastly, we come to the most serious question of the day, which comes from Mark Cezina. Just curious, how many knives do you own? You don't ask a guy that, man. Especially not if a significant other's around. That's just
Exactly. Yeah.
party foul, man. But I'll try to take it seriously because this is the most serious question. I don't know. But I did have to buy dedicated furniture to store it all. That's all we've got time for today, though. If you like what you heard here, let me know. If you didn't like what you heard here, let me know. I don't care. If you have your own questions, again, as always, leave them in the comments, and we'll hopefully be able to get to some nice ones in some upcoming episodes as well. If you want to get your hands on most of these knives, except for the discontinued stuff, or the Malibu, which I'm sure is not in stock right now, we'll leave links in the description to take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program, so at least you can earn some free money to spend on your next knife when you buy one of these knives today. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. So long, thanks for all the fish.